My name is Hannah Bernstein. I'm presently an associate marriage and family therapist working for Jong Therapy. I specialize generally in trauma work. Often I work with adults who had to undergo some kind of severe childhood trauma, or adults who've suffered any kind of consent rupture, including sexual abuse or abusive relationships. I also really like to take a mindfulness approach to therapy. Often we're working with nervous system regulation, what gets called polyvagal theory. So that's using what we know about the nervous system to help develop the skill of emotional regulation, so that clients who have any kind of emotional upset learn to trust that they can calm themselves down and come back to baseline, which helps them be more resilient in their lives. So certainly in my own experience, as I've learned to trust that I'm okay no matter what, whether or not, the friend I call in a moment of crisis will pick up the phone, that I can get through anything on my own, that's been a really great strength to have. So what's the process by which we get there? What's the process by which we learn that we can trust ourselves through emotional upset? I would call that process self-healing. And certainly there are a lot of approaches. For me, a variety of things have been helpful. Certainly pulling from wisdom traditions, including certain mystic or spiritual traditions, pulling from both Eastern and Western philosophies, exploring meaning. All of that has been useful to me, as well as developing a relationship with my own mind that's a place of comfort rather than distress. So learning to create kind of like a positive self-talk, reparenting, this gets called sometimes, having like an inner wise guide that'll talk to you when you're upset. Maybe that sounds a little dissociative, but I think people know what I mean. Oof. Well, it's been a long road, and personally, I don't have the mentality that any of us ever kind of like reach a place where we're fully healed or fully enlightened. I think life has a series of, struggle and lessons and growth. And yeah, I've had struggles along the way. I could get more specific, but I think for the purposes of being a therapist, some neutrality is useful, not really sharing my full trauma history with my clients. But yeah, there have been ruptures to my sense of safety in the world that left me feeling destabilized, distrusting, hyper vigilant, so I would kind of like startle really forcefully, even in minor circumstances. There was a point in my life when I didn't want to be touched at all, even by well-meaning friends who just wanted to come in for a hug. So really there was a healing process of coming back into trust, into safety in my body, into safety with others. And some of that was facilitated with my own therapeutic process with professionals. And a lot of that was just sitting through complex feelings and calming down again and again until I could trust that I could do that and shorten the duration of that.
Yeah. Because that first-hand experience can help our clients go through their own healing process.
Sure.
You mentioned about polyvagal theory and body work. I'm curious about the ways to help your clients through their own trauma through that polyvagal theory and body work.
So one example of this is that we know that when people are sort of in fight or flight mode, when their heart rate's really up and they're hyperventilating, breathing really heavily, temperature can really shift the hormonal state inside of the body and shift that cascade of panic responses into more of that rest mode rather quickly. So this might sound like an extreme intervention, but we're dealing with extreme emotions. So someone in the midst of a panic attack, if they fill their sink or like a basin with ice water and dump their whole face in there, even their whole head in there, that will arrest the panic response and help people calm down very quickly. So that's an extreme version of like a trick you might use. Other things include a technique called EFT, or emotional freedom technique. This is sometimes called tapping. So if you tap on like certain pressure points, and then like say nice things to yourself, that can also be a really great technique for calming down in a moment of panic. My personal philosophy is that we don't forget the past. So I'm not necessarily interested in erasing or overriding negative memories, but perhaps we can reframe that history by bringing in sort of the rehabilitative voice, by making meaning out of pain. How can I turn negative experiences in my life into lessons that then benefit others? You'll see, for example, that women who've been sexually assaulted might find meaning in lobbying to change legislation, or in joining a support group where they can both feel supported by others and, I think really essentially, feel like they're helping others who've gone through what they've gone through. And I know I said women, but it's not just women. That just tends to be the kinds of groups I've done so far. So that gets called sublimation, to make something sublime, and that's a really positive defense mechanism. And I suppose that's one way of rewriting history, by making our pain mean something in our lives. So the words that came to me were love, and that's sort of mixed with compassion, like compassionate love, strength, and wisdom. So when I say love, I really mean the sort of loving kindness that the Buddhists talk about, where you're fostering a sense of appreciation and love for yourself, for your fellow man, for humanity itself, and for the world. So a feeling of compassionate love can be really essential, especially in moments of pain, so that someone who's traumatized can, even in the midst of mourning, which is often necessary, of crying about what got hurt, just be with themselves and be like, yeah, I'm hurt, and even this is okay. I am still lovable in this state. I will have a meaningful future, that kind of compassion. And then the second thing I mentioned was strength. I think that watching ourselves go through extreme challenges and overcome them shows us what we're made of. I don't necessarily believe what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Without help, often those kinds of ruptures can really cause a lot of turmoil. But given the proper environment, yes, I do think that we can become stronger after pain. And finally, wisdom. On a very similar note, I think that going through these intense lows in life and climbing out of the horrible, cavernous dark does give us the kind of insight that, if applied well, becomes something like wisdom. I think there's a real ongoing growth process involved in having a meaningful life. And I think sometimes people come to therapy with the idea that they're broken and need to be fixed, that there's a problem and there will be a solution. They think of it as kind of like a linear process, like problem, solution. And I think that the more I do this work and the more I grow in my own life, the more I think about things more on like a vertical axis. That every moment is an opportunity to deepen into that wisdom, that love, that compassion, being with the moment in this depthful way. and a sort of kind of like transcendence. What is the meaning I will eventually make of this? What is the perhaps spiritual journey that I'm on? And I think that even as life continues to have challenges, if we can approach them with a process of both depth and transcendence to be with that moment well, that to me is the real outcome of therapy. Having a way of being with life rather than being fixed.